So, the other thing to keep in mind is that when you make something like this, the base plate here, then it's made on a raft. It should break off. Now, it's quite a large piece of plastic, it's quite useful, so I've started using them for things. It's nice stuff. It bends more that way than that way, because there's two lots of extrusion that way and one lot of extrusion across. You see where it shows the shape of the tape it was lying against when it was extruded. So, you get a useful piece of plastic. I'm not interested in that side so much, but that side is not too bad. So, I thought I need some LED lamps, and so I made this. Can I zoom out? Or is that zoomed all the way out? No, it's zoomed all the way out. Okay. Well, that's the idea. This is what I use to illuminate the bed of the 3D printer. It's a lamp that I made. That is a 3-watt square chip-on board LED from Banggood Electronics in China. And behind it is a 40mm heatsink. 40mm square. And I've epoxy bonded it to the back of the LED. A bit like that. So once you've done that, this thing only gets lukewarm really, which is good. Once you've done that, the idea is you make a top like this, and then you get some extrusion raft, and you place the extrusion raft in there like that, and that goes behind your LED, and your LED is kept in place by these parts on the moulding. So here's one that I've glued down already. It's already been super glued in place, and the idea is you assemble the LED between there, and then you put the top on, like that, and you put some more glue on the inside, and it all stays together, and you've got a nice LED lamp. So that's the second one I've made. And then you think, you know, that's very large. What I could do with is make it physically smaller, so it's only just bigger than the cob LED itself. And so that's what you do. You decide that you're going to make something which is more suited. So you design something like that, which is a very close fit. I've left about 0.2mm, or maybe half a millimetre I think it was, all the way around for tolerances on things. And it's starting to get things which slide together with an interference fit now. So once you've got that, you print the base, which is a bit like that. Once you've got that, assemble everything together, and you have an LED light. One of the reasons I've started doing things a bit like this is because it's better to print things, it's better to design things in a way you can print, which makes sense I suppose. But basically, that's flat on that side, it's flat on that side, there's no overhang. That thing took 28 minutes to print, rather than the 2 or 3 hours that some of the other components do, or 4 or 5 hours, or the very large pieces. And this thing took 1 hour 20 to print. And the reason for the silly shaped holes, the triangles down there, is that there's no support material required when you've got a shallow angle like that. And again, flat on the back, flat on the top. I could make the top shaped if you needed to, but then you'd have to make that piece shaped, which would be slightly more awkward, and mean that things wouldn't fit together so well. So there you go, there's my latest LED design, light design. It's all a bit fiddly, but that does, it barely moves in there. And the wires which attach to the front go down the little slot at the front here, and then I'll decide afterwards where they go, but there's an overhang in the structure, so the wires can come out of the holes at the side. And the reason I got so many holes is to let air pass the heatsink. I've got to get air through there. that certainly should happen. When it's in its case. And the other reason for all the holes is it gives me areas to put screws into, and if I get a screw which was sort of interference fit in these holes, then I could mount it by whatever means I want. So I've got a convenient little LED thing which is only just bigger than the actual chip on board LED. It's a little bit rattly, but that's alright. If that becomes an issue, I'll glue the heatsink into there when I assemble them, and I will glue them together, because if it's biodegradable PLA, then each one only costs me maybe £1 for the plastic or something like that. So there you go. Here's my latest LED lamps. So this one is in constant use. I use it to see what's going on in the bed, and I'm waiting on some of the flexible tubey bendy stuff arriving, like they use for the coolant on lathes and so forth, or on those Gorilla Pod tripod things, the little bendy tripods for cameras. And I'm going to use that stuff to make a flexible mounting which will enable me to angle these on the 3D printer, illuminating the area that I want to see. And I may do it with these ones instead now. I've got lots of options open to me now. So there you go. There's a quick précis of Pete's 3D printing on week 2 of the actual printing process. Or was this week 3? Anyway, one of the main limitations has been that you can't print things which take more than about 5 or 6 hours on a weeknight, because there's just not enough hours after work. So you have to do large things on the weekend, which is why I've now started going to minimalist designs, so that they only take like an hour or two to print. And the other reason for going to smaller components, of course, is if you really mess up, then you might be writing off a 2-hour print or a 28-minute print, rather than a much longer period of time. So there you go. Big fun.